In my previous life, my husband and his widowed sister-in-law had an illegitimate daughter, yet he forged an azoospermia report to trick me into adopting her. After the car accident, I discovered from a diary in the drawer that he had secretly transferred his inheritance and left me with millions in debt. During the asset liquidation, he walked away with nothing, and I was utterly devastated. Reborn. I feigned illness and deliberately delayed the adoption. In my previous life, I had spent 30 years of marriage with Hishuan, believing it to be a happy and fulfilling union, getting along well with my in-laws without ever having a single argument. Later, although our daughter was adopted, she was obedient, sensible, filial, and caring. However, the cruel twist of fate came so suddenly. After Hishuan passed away in a car accident, while sorting through his belongings, I accidentally discovered the diary he had locked in his desk drawer. The densely packed handwriting pierced my heart like sharp blades. It turned out he had always deeply loved his widowed sister-in-law. What shattered me even more was that the daughter we had adopted was actually his biological child with that woman. When the lawyer read out the will Hishuan had prepared long ago, I was struck as if by lightning. He had secretly transferred all his assets behind my back, leaving me with nothing but a mountain of debt. Overwhelmed by rage, I suffered a cerebral infarction and collapsed heavily to the ground. The daughter I had cherished for years merely sat calmly in her chair, watching me struggle in agony on the floor for a full half-hour before leisurely dialing the emergency number. Due to the delayed medical attention, I was left with severe sequelae, paralyzed and unable to care for myself. For the next 3 years, I endured the malicious torment of caregivers, ultimately starving to death. Opening my eyes again, I found myself back in the 5th year of my marriage to Hishuan, the very year he was planning to adopt a child. An intense hunger surged over me like a tidal wave, tearing at my insides, while a ringing filled my ears. With great difficulty, I opened my eyes, and it took a long while before my surroundings gradually came into focus. It was a simple hospital room, with 2 saline bottles hanging from an enforced stand beside the bed, the liquid dripping slowly through a thin tube into the back of my hand. A faded poster about preventing spring infectious diseases was stuck on the yellowed wall, with the year in the bottom right corner showing 1993. Before I could even process this sudden turn of events, a deep male voice sounded beside my ear. "You're awake. Are you feeling unwell anywhere?" I turned toward the voice and saw the young and handsome Hishuan sitting by the hospital bed, looking at me with concern, though a hint of barely concealed disgust flickered deep in his eyes. "What happened to me?" I spoke, only to realize my voice was hoarse beyond recognition. Hishuan frowned, his tone tinged with complaint. "It's because you insisted on queuing up for fried dough sticks this morning and ended up getting knocked unconscious by a motorcycle. We were supposed to go to the orphanage to complete the adoption paperwork today. Don't you think you're just causing trouble?" Memories slowly flooded back to me. I had actually returned to the day we were supposed to adopt Hexin. In my previous life, during the 4th year of our marriage, Hishuan told me he had been diagnosed with azoospermia and even showed me a medical report. I believed him, though I felt a pang of disappointment. I consoled myself with the thought that we could still adopt a child and build a complete family together. Later, we adopted a 3-month-old abandoned baby from the orphanage and named her Hexin, hoping she would have a warm and beautiful life. But I never imagined that the daughter I had loved for over 20 years was actually the child of Hishuan and his widowed sister-in-law, Luqingqing. This cruel truth exploded in my heart like a bomb, plunging me into endless pain and confusion. Hishuan and I had known each other since childhood, practically growing up together. Later, his father sent someone to propose, finalizing our marriage. After the wedding, our life was simple and happy. Although we didn't have children of our own, our adopted daughter was well-behaved and sensible. I also got along well with my in-laws, and there were never any conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. When Hexin was 7 months old, she was diagnosed with complex congenital heart disease due to breathing difficulties and recurrent respiratory infections. This news struck like a bolt from the blue, plunging our entire family into immense pain. To treat her, we scrambled for money everywhere and ended up with nearly 100,000 yuan in debt. But I never complained about anything. Since we had adopted her, she was my child, no matter what difficulties we faced. I would do everything in my power to protect and care for her. During our poorest times, to buy the anticoagulant medication Hexin needed after her heart stent placement, I secretly went to the blood bank to sell my blood. Watching the bright red blood flow from my body, I felt no fear, only deep love and responsibility for my daughter. I told myself that as long as my daughter could grow up healthy and happy, any sacrifice I made was worth it. It wasn't until after the turn of the millennium that our lives gradually improved. Once, I naively believed that Hishuan was the lover who could weather storms with me, the one who would grow old with me. However, after his death, I read his diary and discovered that while I was selling blood at the blood bank to raise money for medicine, Hishuan had used his hidden 7,000 yuan to buy a high-quality jade bracelet for Lu Qingqing. In his diary, he wrote, Su Jiwei has always been resilient, she always finds a way to deal with the difficulties at hand. At worst, she still has her brother, her parents. If she's shameless enough, she can just go back to her family and ask for help. I flipped through the diary page by page, watching them travel across the beautiful landscapes of our country, seeing them secretly take Xian to amusement parks, witnessing my husband work hard to build his career, buying properties and luxury cars for Lu Qingqing, and even watching them prearrange a joint burial plot. Tears streamed down my face, my heart filled with anger and despair. I laughed until tears fell, but what did it matter? All of this made me feel an overwhelming sense of irony and absurdity. After Hishuan was buried, the lawyer read his will to me and Xian. It was only then that I learned that, aside from leaving me with nearly 10 million in debt, he had only left me 2 dilapidated adobe houses in his rural hometown that had long been uninhabited. All other assets had already been transferred away. Overwhelmed by rage, I suffered a cerebral infarction and collapsed heavily to the ground. Xian merely stood silently by, looking down at me as if I were an insignificant insect. It wasn't until after the optimal rescue window had passed that he leisurely dialed the emergency number. Due to the delay in receiving medical treatment, I was left with severe aftereffects, paralyzed in bed, unable to take care of myself in eating, drinking, or using the bathroom. For the next 3 years, I struggled through days of malicious torment from the caregivers and was eventually starved to death. During those 3 years, Xian never visited me once. Thinking of all this, my heart was filled with hatred. With my fingernails digging deeply into my palms, I looked up again at Hishuan. He was frowning as he examined me, and when I remained silent for a long time, he spoke up. His voice was gentle but carried an undeniable authority. Once you finish these 2-4 drips, I'll handle your discharge. The orphanage is waiting for us to go over and complete the paperwork, I replied expressionlessly, my tone cold. If you want to go through with the adoption, go ahead and do it yourself. I won't be joining you. Hishuan's voice suddenly rose sharply. The adoption process requires both spouses to be present. What's the use of me going alone? I rolled my eyes and replied with disgust, that's your business. What does it have to do with me? He seemed taken aback by my response, his expression blank for a moment as he stood there, unsure how to react. Just then, the door to the hospital room was gently pushed open. A fashionable woman in a beige long trench coat walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers. It was Hishuan's widowed sister-in-law, Lu Qingqing. She had a delicate and beautiful face, likely having given birth not long ago, with a plump and curvaceous figure that exuded an indescribable charm. However, her face carried a faint trace of sorrow. Hishuan's elder brother had passed away 3 years ago from liver cancer, leaving her to live alone. Her in-laws were not old-fashioned people. After their eldest son's death, they suggested that Lu Qingqing could remarry if she met someone suitable and even prepared a dowry for her. Lu Qingqing knelt weeping before her in-laws and said, in this lifetime, I am a member of the He family while alive, and a ghost of the He family when dead. I will never marry anyone else. At that time, like my in-laws, I was moved by her deep affection for her deceased husband. In daily life, I often took care of her, always thinking of her when it came to food and necessities. For a period of time, Lu Qingqing took nearly half a year of long leave from the drama troupe, claiming she had fractured her calf. When Hishuan took me to visit her in the hospital, her leg was indeed in a cast. Foolishly, I even gave her 2,000 yuan, telling her to rest and recover without worry. After being discharged, she said she would go back to her parents' home to recuperate and didn't show her face for over half a year. Looking back now, I was truly foolish in my past life, so foolish that I could have been a specimen of idiocy in a museum. When Hishuan saw Lu Qingqing, he stood up excitedly. Sister-in-law, what brings you here? Lu Qingqing forced a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. I heard Jiwei was in a car accident, so I rushed over during the troop's lunch break to check on her. Is everything all right? Before I could answer, Hishuan eagerly brought a stool over for Lu Qingqing and said, it's nothing serious. The doctor said she has a mild concussion and needs to be observed. After sitting down, Lu Qingqing placed the flowers on the bedside table, then turned to me and softly scolded, Jiwei, how could you be so careless? You knew we were going to adopt a child today, yet you insisted on going out to buy breakfast. Now that you're lying in the hospital, what are we going to do about the adoption? Mom and Dad are still waiting eagerly at home. No, they'll be so Disappointed, she sighed softly, her eyes filled with blame and resentment. He Shuan chimed in at the right moment. Jiwei, why don't we handle the adoption procedures this afternoon? They're quite simple. If you feel unwell, I can bring you back here afterward. I sneered at the shameless pair before me, but for now, I didn't want to expose them. As the saying goes, catch a thief with the stolen goods, catch adulterers in the act. I wouldn't act recklessly. I needed to gather enough evidence to make them pay for what they had done. In my previous life, out of consideration for my in-laws who had lost their son in their old age and had long hoped for us to adopt a child, I indeed left the hospital on the same day and went to the welfare home to complete the adoption procedures for Hexin. However, just a few months after bringing her home, Hexin was diagnosed with complex congenital heart disease. The surgery alone would cost 70 to 80,000 yuan, not to mention various other expenses. In 1993, He Shuan and I combined earned just over 1,000 yuan a month. To pay for her treatment, I used up all my dowry and savings, nearly emptied my parents' retirement funds, and borrowed from every relative and friend we knew, but it was still far from enough at that time. We lived in the staff quarters of our workplace. In the end, we had to mortgage my parents' house at the bank to secure a loan of 50,000 yuan. After the surgery, Hexin was extremely frail and required constant care. I had no choice but to quit my job and stay home to take care of her full-time. It wasn't until she started kindergarten that her health gradually improved. After Hexin began school, with my parents' help, I opened a restaurant. I worked from dawn till dusk every day, just to earn a little more money to pay off the debts. But while I was enduring all these hardships for Hexin, what was her biological mother, Lu Qingqing, doing? She was living a glamorous life as an actress in a theater troupe, dancing at the lakefront square after work, enjoying Western meals and coffee with friends on weekends, and traveling everywhere during holidays. She lived freely and boldly, genuine and unrestrained, never worrying about making a living. That kind of life was a distant dream I could never reach. Thinking of this, I gritted my teeth in resentment. He Shuan reached up to touch my forehead and asked softly, "Why do you suddenly look so pale? Are you feeling unwell?" "Somewhere. Should I call a doctor for you?" I took the opportunity to respond, gritting my teeth and saying, "I'm feeling extremely dizzy right now. The world is spinning, and I keep feeling nauseous. I can't even get up." He Shuan hesitated. "Then I'll go call a doctor for you now." I pretended to be in pain and closed my eyes. More than 10 minutes later, the doctor arrived. After a careful examination, he repeatedly emphasized that I could not be discharged for the time being and must remain in the hospital for observation, otherwise they would not be responsible if any issues arose. Lu Qingqing stared blankly in the direction the doctor had left, her eyes gradually reddening. She stumbled out of the ward in disarray. He Shuan glanced at me, then looked toward the direction Lu Qingqing had gone, and ultimately chased after her. I pulled out the 4-needle from my hand and quietly followed them. In the stairwell, Lu Qingqing's delicate sobbing and He Shuan's heartbroken comforting could be heard. "Don't cry, my heart breaks when you cry. Don't worry, I promise I'll bring our daughter home in 2 days at the latest." Lu Qingqing cried even harder. "You promised me you'd take Xinxin home today. Her health isn't good to begin with, and she was coughing a little when we left her at the welfare center the day before yesterday. What if her condition worsens?" He Shuan held her in his arms. "I feel for our daughter being alone at the welfare center too. But what else can we do right now? She didn't show up, so the adoption procedures couldn't be completed. It's all because of that bitch Su Jiwei. Why did she have to get into a car accident today of all days? Don't cry. I'll take you home first, and later I'll go to the orphanage to see our daughter." Watching the two of them walk away, I stomped my feet in frustration, wishing I had a phone to record what had just happened. That night, He Shuan didn't come to the hospital to stay with me. Early the next morning, after signing the voluntary discharge form, I went straight to complete the discharge procedures anyway. Based on my memories from my past life, my body was indeed fine. As soon as I entered the residential compound, I saw a few gossipy women pointing and whispering about me. Judging by their expressions and glances, they were probably mocking me again for not being able to have children. I walked over and smiled openly, saying, "Oh, aunties," chatting. "Are you talking about how I can't have kids?" Their faces turned slightly awkward, and they quickly waved their hands, saying, No, you must have misheard." I smiled and explained, "Actually, it's not that I can't have children, it's He Shuan who has azoospermia. It's not my fault." They froze for a moment, and then one of them blurted out, "But I heard from Xiaohe that you're a stone woman, born unable to have children. In the past, what decent family would dare marry someone like you?" Another chimed in, "Yeah, I heard that Xiaohe's older brother passed away. young without leaving any children, and now you can't have any either. It looks like the He family line is going to end with you. I turned to the woman who spoke first and asked, Auntie Lee, have you cut ties with that man outside? Is Uncle Lee still hitting you because of it? She looked up abruptly, her eyes wide with disbelief. I ignored her and turned to the woman in the middle, saying, Auntie Jo, I heard that Lingling got pregnant at just 19 and wanted to marry her boyfriend, but his wife didn't agree to the marriage. Is that true? The smile on her face slowly faded away. I adhered to the principle of treating everyone equally, then turned to the last woman and said, by the way, regarding the blind review, don't let my Uncle Wang steal from the factory anymore. I just went to sell it, and if you get caught, you'll end up in prison, and your youngest son, tell him not to climb through windows in the middle of the night to steal women's underwear anymore. For a moment, the surroundings fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Just as they were about to erupt, I casually added, all of this was told to me by He Shuwen. He loves gossiping about you all in his free time. If you have secrets, you'd better not let him find out. After saying that, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the sound of a woman's hysterical cursing. In the evening, as soon as He Shuwen returned from work, he started roaring, Su Jiwei, get out here right now. I sauntered out of the bedroom, took one look at his face, and couldn't help but burst out laughing. His left cheek was swollen high, bloodstains were smeared at the corner of his mouth, his right cheek bore several scratch marks, and his hair was a disheveled mess. He looked utterly pathetic. He yelled at me, what on earth did you say to the Zhou family? Why did they surround and beat me up as soon as I stepped into the residential compound? They even told me to keep your mouth shut. It hurts like hell. He clutched his swollen face, grimacing in pain. I put on an innocent expression and shook my head vigorously. I have no idea. I raised my voice angrily, saying, when I came back this afternoon, they mocked me for being a hen that doesn't lay eggs. I only argued back a little, and because of that, they dared to hit you. Are they bullying you because they think your wife's family is all dead? Let's go. We'll go to the police station and ask the officers to settle this. As I spoke, I grabbed him and tried to pull him out the door. He hesitated for a moment, then shook off my hand. Forget it, we're neighbors, there must be some misunderstanding. I'll go to their house tomorrow and ask for an explanation. He took off his cotton coat and hung it on the coat rack behind the door, then wrung out a cold towel and pressed it to his face, hissing in pain several times. After a long while, he finally complained to me, by the way, why didn't you tell me you were being discharged from the hospital? I made a wasted trip there. Since you've recovered, let's go tomorrow to finalize the adoption paperwork. If we delay any longer, the child might be taken by someone else. I thought for a moment and didn't outright refuse, only saying with difficulty, tomorrow won't work. My parents asked me to go back home, saying there's something going on. When I mentioned my parents, Hewen's face showed some hesitation. Over the years of our marriage, my parents had helped us quite a bit. His job at the steel mill was originally arranged through my brother's father-in-law's connections. Naturally, he didn't want to offend my family. I reassured him, how about the day after tomorrow? I'll stay at my parents' place tomorrow night. You can ride your bike there early the next morning, and I'll ask my brother to drive us to the orphanage in his brother-in-law's car. On such a cold day, you can't expect me to hold the child and ride back on the back of your bicycle, can you? Hearing this, He Shuwen's furrowed brows gradually relaxed, and the smile on her face grew a bit more genuine. She hugged me tightly and said, you're still the thoughtful one, dear. Let's do as you say. We'll go handle the paperwork the morning after tomorrow. Looking at her face, I felt a wave of nausea and nearly vomited. The next day, He Shuwen was beaming with joy. Before heading to work, she unusually gave me another 500 yuan, telling me not to go back to my parents' house empty-handed. I smiled and tucked the money into my pocket, but instead of going home, I spent the entire day wandering outside. It wasn't until He Shuwen was almost off work that I leisurely rode my bicycle straight to the residential complex where Lu Qingqing lived. The apartment Lu Qingqing now occupied was newly purchased after the death of He Shuwen's eldest brother. Worried that she wouldn't be able to move past the grief of losing her husband if she stayed in the old house, her in-laws took it upon themselves to sell the old property and buy this small two-bedroom apartment in a newly built complex. The neighbors around weren't entirely clear about Lu Qingqing's past, and many assumed she was the daughter of her in-laws. Her in-laws didn't offer much explanation either. After their son's death, they truly treated Lu Qingqing as their own daughter. I sat in the noodle shop across from the complex and ordered a bowl of noodles. Before long, I saw He Shuwen and Lu Qingqing chatting and laughing as they entered the complex together. It wasn't until it was completely dark, and they still hadn't come out, that I felt reassured enough to leave. At 9 o'clock in the evening, I banged on my in-laws' door so loudly it shook the entire building. Mom, Dad, open the door quickly. Something terrible has happened. Sister-in-law was harassed by some hooligans. Sister-in-law is in trouble. Hurry and open the door. My in-laws lived in an old-style tube-shaped apartment building, with neighbors packed closely together. Hearing the loud banging, the neighbors quickly threw on their clothes and opened their doors, anxiously asking what had happened. With tears streaming down my face, I put on a vivid performance, explaining that a few troublemakers, who were fans of Sister-in-law's theater troupe, had followed her all the way into the complex after seeing how beautiful she was. Hee-Shuan was also injured by the hooligans while protecting his sister-in-law. I managed to escape in the chaos. The people living here are all old neighbors of my in-laws, most of whom watched Hee-Shuan and his brother grow up. Now that the eldest son has passed away, his wife is being harassed by hooligans. Everyone's anger was ignited, and they quickly went home, put on their clothes, grabbed whatever tools they could find, and set out to teach those hooligans a lesson. Over a dozen people rode their bicycles, arriving in a grand procession at Lu Qingqing's doorstep. From inside the room, faint pleas of a woman could be heard. No more, really no more, I can't take it anymore, please let me go. However, the pleas sounded far too ambiguous, less like someone being harassed by hooligans and more like flirtation. For a moment, everyone exchanged glances, unsure whether to charge in. My mother-in-law was the first to react, her face flushing red as she tried to smooth things over. There might be some misunderstanding, she said. It's so late, why don't we all go back first? But it was too late. With a loud bang, I kicked the door wide open and shouted, Sister-in-law, don't be afraid, I've brought people to save you. Then, turning to the crowd behind me, I yelled, what are you all standing around for? Hurry up and follow me in to catch the hooligans. A few minutes later, everyone stared in shock as I sat on top of Hee-Shuan, slapping both him and the person hiding under the covers with all my might. I cursed, you damned bastard, you're worse than an animal. How could you sleep with her when your brother's body isn't even cold yet, sister? In-law, do you two have any sense of shame or morality? This is incest. You're worse than pigs or dogs. Where do you expect mom and dad to show their faces? How can your brother rest in peace underground? I'm going to beat you two shameless dogs to death. The two of them didn't dare fight back at all, naked and trembling. They could only hide under the covers and shout, stop it right now, stop. There was no way I could let this go. In my past life, they had treated me like a fool, keeping me in the dark while I slaved away for them my whole life, only to end up with two collapsing mud brick houses and a mountain of debt. Neighbors from all over the building rushed in to break up the fight, or rather, the commotion drew so much attention that even neighbors from Lu Qingqing's community came to watch, filling the room with people. It was only then that my in-laws snapped out of their shock and desperately tried to pull me off the bed. Good girl, we know you're angry. You've hit them, you've cursed them, now please come down and let them get dressed, we'll handle the rest for you. I remained unmoved, still throwing punch after punch at their heads. My mother-in-law suddenly knelt down in front of me. Jiwei, please, for my sake, come down first and let them put on some clothes. Okay. I glanced around out of the corner of my eye, seeing the room packed with people. I knew the affair between this despicable pair could no longer be hidden, feeling as if all my strength had drained away. I slid off the bed and sat on the floor, covering my face as I sobbed. I had to cover my face. I was smiling too obviously. The onlookers were eventually ushered out of the room. My mother-in-law repeatedly apologized to the old neighbors and, after seeing them downstairs, locked the door from the inside. She helped me up from the floor and sat me down on a chair in the living room. I still covered my face, silently weeping. My father-in-law slammed the table and roared, you two beasts, what are you still doing lying in bed? Get dressed right now and come out here. Not long after, Hee-Shuan emerged from the bedroom with disheveled hair and a face covered in blood. Some of the injuries were from the Zhou family's assault yesterday, while others were inflicted by me just moments ago. He knelt straight on the floor without uttering a word. My father-in-law glared at him coldly, then suddenly raised his foot and kicked him hard in the chest. Hee-Shuan was knocked to the ground, his lips tightly pressed together, but he crawled back up and returned to his original kneeling position. My father-in-law pointed at his nose and angrily scolded him, you beast, the woman inside is your sister-in-law. Your sister-in-law, how could you do such a filthy thing? You've never given me a moment's peace since you were a child, chasing chickens and dogs, causing trouble, relying on your petty cleverness to cheat and slack off. You're not even half the man your brother was. Your brother loved and cared for you when you were young, and every time you made a mistake, he protected you and took the blame for you. Yet it's only been 2 or 3 years since he passed, and look at the despicable things you've done. My father-in-law was so angry he could barely catch his breath, and his hand trembled as he pointed at Hee-Shuan. These words seemed to strike a nerve in Hee-Shuan. He had been hanging his head all along, but suddenly he looked up and glared fiercely at his father. My father-in-law raised his hand and slapped him across the face. What, you still refuse to accept it? He shoo and pressed his tongue against the cheek that had been struck, then suddenly smiled. Slowly rising to his feet, he spat out a mouthful of blood with a careless air and looked at his father provocatively. That's right, I'm nowhere near as good as your son in every way, but so what? No matter how outstanding Yishuli was, he was still a short-lived ghost. He died at just 30 years old. Ever since I was young, you've always compared me to Yishuli. In your eyes, I'm never as good as him. When he married my sister-in-law, you thought they were a perfect match, a talented man and a beautiful woman, but when I married Sujiwei, you said I was reaching above my station. What do you mean, reaching above my station? Isn't it just because her family has a bit of dirty money, and her brother married into a powerful family? That's why you were so eager to send a matchmaker to propose back then, but let me tell you, I never cared for Sujiwei in the first place. The only person I've ever loved is my sister-in-law. I was so angry I laughed. If you want to pursue true love, go ahead and pursue it. But why do you have to drag me down? My father-in-law was trembling with rage, clutching his chest as he slumped into a chair. My mother-in-law rushed over to cover Yishuan's mouth, then punched him twice, crying, "You wretched child, shut up, are you trying to kill your father?" Yishuan suddenly turned to look at me, his expression dark and sinister. Sujiwei, you planned all of this on purpose, didn't you? I pretended not to understand, putting on an innocent face. Are you saying I deliberately set you up to go find my sister-in-law, deliberately set you up to strip naked and get into her bed, deliberately set you up to be on top of her? Laughing shamelessly, the tone was just right. Yishuan, furious, cut me off, roughly pushing his messy hair back as he struggled to contain his anger. Since the truth is out now, there's no need for Qingqing and me to hide anymore. Sujiwei, I want a divorce. Get out of here. I never want to see you again. Without waiting for my response, he turned to his parents and said, word by word, after the divorce, I'm going to marry Qingqing. Whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter. If you agree, I'll still be your son. If you don't, just consider me dead, like my older brother. No, all of you, leave. I fell silent. I had been worried that he would stubbornly refuse to divorce. But now, it seemed he was eager to pursue his own happiness. The divorce between Yishuan and me went surprisingly smoothly. Aside from his personal belongings and clothes, everything else went to me, including the bicycle he had ridden for 3 years and all his wages and bonuses for the year. Of course, he didn't agree at first. I went to Lu Qingqing's theater troupe and exposed their affair to her superiors. Under the threat of exposure, Yishuan had no choice but to compromise. He couldn't bear to see his Qingqing suffer even the slightest harm, and he set a condition. After I got the property, I was not to cause any more trouble at Lu Qingqing's theater troupe. I agreed, but whether I could actually do it was another matter. On the day we went to get the divorce certificate, Lu Qingqing came along too. It was as if she was deliberately asserting her dominance, sitting on the back seat of Yishuan's newly bought bicycle, tightly hugging his waist. After we finished at the Civil Affairs Bureau and walked out, Yishuan snapped at me angrily. Sujiwei, I never imagined you could be so unreasonable and scheming. You've ruined my and Qingqing's reputation. Do you know how the people in her neighborhood look at her now? Do you know what my colleagues at work are saying about me? I stared coldly at the two of them, arm in arm. They weren't ashamed of what they had done, yet they had the nerve to blame me for ruining their reputation. I let out a mocking laugh. I don't know how others see it, but in my eyes, you two are the epitome of a shameless, immoral couple, utterly disgraceful and without a shred of decency. Lu Qingqing stiffened, her face turning pale, and she whimpered pitifully, Shuan, she's insulting us so harshly. Shuan flew into a rage. Look at yourself now, acting like a shrew. I really regret marrying you in the first place, Qingqing, and I share true love. What right do you have to slander her like this? Apologize to Qingqing right now, or I'll make sure you regret it. I looked at him as if he were an idiot, cursed under my breath, and pedaled my bicycle away. It wasn't until I was 20 meters down the road that his furious roars and curses finally reached my ears. Is that all? After the divorce, I quickly resigned from my job. With my previous experience in restaurant management, I used the money from the divorce settlement and borrowed some from my parents to open a restaurant with 3 storefronts in the city center. In the future, there will be wave after wave of layoffs. Even if I didn't resign, I would likely be laid off sooner or later. What I need to do now is save money and quietly wait for the stock market bull run in 1996. I clearly remember which stocks were the most profitable. I had thought that after divorcing me, Shuan would marry Lu Qingqing as soon as possible and adopt Xian from the welfare home. But he didn't. Instead, he delayed it for 2 or 3 months. One rainy day, I happened to run into his mother, who had fallen on the street. After taking her to the clinic, she held my hand and chatted with me, and that's when I found out the reason. After the affair was exposed, the scandal spread like wildfire. His parents felt too ashamed to show their faces and moved back to their rural hometown. Shortly after returning, his father fell ill. This time, his mother came to the city to sell the old house they had been living in. Shuan had gone back to find his parents, hoping they would return to the city to help take care of Xian, but his father didn't even open the gate to the courtyard. When Shuan and I divorced, he essentially left with nothing. The steel factory didn't pay salaries on a monthly basis, sometimes every 3 months, sometimes every 6 months, so he had very little money on hand. As for Lu Qingqing, her salary was mostly spent on pursuing a certain quality of life, especially since she was an actress in a theater troupe, a profession that naturally made her more focused on her appearance. The two of them had no extra money to raise a child and couldn't afford a nanny, so the adoption was repeatedly delayed. When I found out that Lu Qingqing and Shuan still hadn't gotten married, I secretly grew anxious. How could this be? True love should be firmly locked in place. So after returning home, I immediately wrote a whistleblower letter and sent it to the troupe where Lu Qingqing worked, reporting her for forging false medical records to fraudulently obtain wages and harming the interests of the unit. Additionally, she had interfered in someone else's marriage, given birth to an illegitimate child, severely damaged another person's marital relationship, and violated basic morality. Only by cutting off her career would she wholeheartedly throw herself into Shuan's arms. As for Shuan, I wouldn't touch his job for now. What if he lost his job and Lu Qingqing refused to be with him? My restaurant had been operating for about half a year, and business was booming day by day. In those days, state-owned restaurants still dominated the city, but the attitude of the service staff was often disappointing. I trained my employees according to a customer-first model: smiling service, enthusiastic attitude, and never overcharging customers. If guests ordered too many dishes, we would kindly remind them to avoid waste. After the meal, we would also offer a plate of seasonal fruit. As a result, repeat customers kept increasing, and our reputation grew better and better. In the scorching heat of July, I went to the city hospital for a checkup because I often felt short of breath and tightness in my chest. Unexpectedly, I ran into Shuan holding Xian in the hospital corridor. He sat blankly on a bench, his face pale. It had only been a little over half a year since I last saw him, but he had aged noticeably. His hair was messy, and he had a stubbly beard. It's true that whoever takes care of a child ages faster. As I walked out of the consultation room, I heard a commotion coming from the next room. Shuan was kneeling on the ground, pleading desperately with the doctor. "Doctor, please save my daughter. I really can't scrape together enough money to take her to a big city for treatment. You're such a skilled doctor. Please think of a way. I've heard from others that you're an expert in treating heart disease. You must have a solution. Please save my child." I looked around but didn't see Lu Qingqing anywhere. A voice filled with anger rang out. "What do you think you're doing kneeling here like this? Would I stand by and watch if I could save the child? I told you, your daughter's condition is too complex. We can't handle it here at the hospital, and no one here can perform that kind of surgery. You need to go to Beijing or Shanghai for treatment. Get up quickly, don't delay other patients." I watched from outside the door as Shuan's back slowly slumped, until he finally collapsed to the ground. I understand exactly how he feels right now, because in my past life, I was exactly like him, but in this life, whether that baby girl lives or dies has nothing to do with me. I turned to leave, but the man behind me suddenly called out, "Su Jiwei." She stumbled toward me, holding the child. "Su Jiwei, can you lend me 80,000 yuan? Xinxin, she was diagnosed with a heart condition and needs surgery." I was stunned by his words, mainly because I never expected him to be so shameless. "Shuan, have you lost your mind? You're asking me to lend you money to treat the child you had with Lu Qingqing." Shuan was taken aback. "What nonsense are you talking about? Xinxin is a child I adopted from the welfare home." I looked at him coldly and sneered. "Is that so? Do you think just because others don't say anything, they're fools? But do you dare to go to the hospital for a paternity test?" Unexpectedly, Shuan didn't try to argue. He looked at me pleadingly. "Jiwei, no matter how wrong we were, it's all mine and Qingqing's fault. It has nothing to do with Xinxin. The doctor said she'll die without the surgery. Please, can you ask your brother to lend us a few thousand? So now you remember my brother." I looked at his pleading and desperate face, curled my lips into a cold smile. "Weren't you the one who looked down on my brother for marrying into a powerful family? How do you have the nerve to ask them for money now? You want to have your cake and eat it too? How utterly disgusting." Shuan opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off directly. I don't have the nerve to ask my brother for help, so you might as well go to him yourself and see if he's willing to lend you the money." With that, I turned and walked away. Ever since my brother found out about his affair, he's been itching for a chance to teach him a lesson. If he dares to ask for a loan, he'll probably find out why flowers are so red while he's at it. I heard that Shuwen had been so worried about raising money for his daughter's surgery lately that he couldn't eat or sleep. I knew this was the perfect time to kick him while he was down. Just as I was about to write a letter to Shuwen's workplace, reporting him for abusing his authority to accept benefits from others, news suddenly broke that Shuwen had been arrested for embezzling public funds. I eagerly inquired everywhere and finally learned the specific reason for his arrest. The forbidden love between Shuwen and his sister-in-law had been the talk of the steel mill, but since the victim hadn't made a scene, the mill's leadership turned a blind eye, quietly removing his name from the list of candidates for promotion to manager. Later, Lu Qingqing was fired from the theater troupe and simply moved into the steel mill's residential compound where Shuwen lived, although everyone gossiped about it, since one was divorced and the other was a widow, and despite being a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law, others couldn't find much fault with them. After getting married, they adopted the baby girl with a heart condition from the orphanage. Ever since bringing the child home, the two of them argued frequently, big fights every 3 days, small ones every 2. Gradually, Lu Qingqing rarely came home to pay for their child's medical treatment. Shuwen borrowed money from all his colleagues, but no one had much to spare. As the saying goes, you help in an emergency, not in poverty, and over time, fewer and fewer people were willing to lend him money. Just when Shuwen was at his wit's end over his daughter's surgery expenses, a payment of over 70,000 yuan from the mill came into his hands. After much internal struggle, he embezzled the money to pay for his daughter's surgery. Shuwen was discovered embezzling public funds by the company's finance department just 1 month later, and the police were called. He was taken away by the police for investigation, but because his daughter was frail and needed care, and the child's mother was not around, the police granted him bail pending trial. The legal department of the steel mill gave Shuwen 1 month to return the 70,000 yuan, after which they would no longer pursue legal action. However, the money had already been used for Xian's surgery, and Shuwen simply couldn't repay it. In the end, Shuwen's parents scraped together the money, along with the proceeds from selling their house, to repay the company on their son's behalf. After this, Shuwen was naturally fired, and the house he lived in at the steel mill's residential compound was also taken back. With no other choice, he had to take Xian and return to the countryside. As for Lu Qingqing, she seemed to have suddenly vanished from the city, and no one knew where she had gone. Time flew by, and several years had passed. With the money I earned from running a restaurant and stock trading, I bought 2 apartments in the capital and also opened a restaurant there. The original restaurant was handed over to my cousin to manage, and I receive a 20% share of the profits each year. In the following years, I was busy opening new restaurants and investing in real estate. As my savings grew, I gradually slowed down my work pace. Through a friend's introduction, I started a new relationship. The man, named Taoheng, was involved in organic chemistry research and was also remarried. However, his divorce was different from mine with Shuwen. There was no infidelity or betrayal. It was purely due to differing life philosophies. His ex-wife was a woman who loved adventure and travel, enjoying challenges like climbing snow-capped mountains, rock climbing, and exploring deep into jungles or grasslands. Taoheng, on the other hand, preferred stability and enjoyed spending weekends at home reading books or listening to music. The two felt they weren't compatible and divorced amicably. When Taoheng came home to meet my parents, my brother was overly enthusiastic and ended up drinking a lot with him, getting quite drunk himself. After dinner, I didn't ask the driver to take us back. Instead, I walked slowly home arm in arm with Taoheng. Passing by Chunming Road, I saw a steaming wonton stall. Thinking that Taoheng had been drinking all evening and hadn't eaten much, I pulled him over, intending to have a bowl of wontons to warm our stomachs, but when I saw the apron-wearing owner clearly, I froze in place. It was Shuwen. Sitting beside him was a thin, frail little girl, holding a cloth doll and swinging her legs boredly on a stool. Perhaps sensing something, the man wrapping wontons looked up at me. Our eyes met, and Shuwen's face was full of shock, his eyelashes trembling slightly. "Jiwei, you're here." When his gaze fell on my and Taoheng's clasped hands, his body stiffened slightly, and he asked in a dry voice, "Is this your boyfriend?" I nodded. The light in Shuwen's eyes gradually dimmed. Taoheng seemed to guess Shuwen's identity and pointed ahead, whispering, "You two talk. I'll go ahead to sober up a bit. Call me if you need anything." He didn't go far, just about 20 or 30 meters away. At that moment, the thin, small girl beside him walked over, took Hishuan's hand, and asked, "Daddy, I'm so sleepy and cold, when can we go home?" Hishuan lovingly patted her head and said, "Be good, Xingxing, let's hold on a little longer. Once we've earned enough for Xingxing's medicine and next semester's tuition, we'll go home. Oh, this is your Aunt Sue. Say hello to Auntie." She seemed to think of something, her words coming out. Haltingly, I took a box of chocolates from my bag and handed it to her. "Hello." Xian looked up at her father, and only after seeing Hishuan nod did she happily take the chocolate from my hand. "Thank you, Auntie Sue." She held the chocolate and sat back down on that tall stool. Hishuan watched her back inside. Xingxing had a heart stent surgery when she was little and will need to take anticoagulant medication for life. Lu Qingqing didn't care about her. After I was fired from the steel mill, she ran off with another man, taking the last 1,000 or so yuan I had with her. A glimmer of tears flashed in his eyes. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have divorced you back then. I brought all of this on myself. If I said I regret it, would you give me another chance?" I looked at him quietly, feeling that his expression was all too familiar. He raised his hand and wiped his tears with his sleeve. "Would you like a bowl of wontons? You always liked the shrimp wontons I made before." My heart suddenly trembled. I was certain that Hishuan had also been reborn, because it wasn't until our 10th wedding anniversary that he first made wontons for me, and they turned into a pot of mush. But he didn't give up, trying again and again. Later, I saw in his diary that it was because Lu Qingqing loved wontons. She thought outside restaurants were unhygienic, so she learned how to mix the filling and wrap wontons herself, just using me for practice. Thinking of this, I sneered. Inwardly, "Forget it. I can't stomach the wontons you made. You should save them for your sister-in-law." Hishuan's face flashed with embarrassment. She stiffened her back, turned around, and took a bottle of milk from the glass cabinet, placing it in front of me. "I remember you often have trouble sleeping at night and have a habit of drinking milk." I didn't even glance at the bottle of milk. Instead, I looked straight at his right leg and asked in surprise, "Did your leg get injured?" She lowered her head to look at her leg, her expression pained. "When Xingxing was 4 years old, I took her to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. She suddenly ran into the middle of the road, and in order to save her, my right leg was run over by a car. It's been like that ever since. No company is willing to hire someone with a limp, so I set up a stall selling wontons." His voice grew softer, tinged with a sob. "Zue, I regret it. I really regret it. If I hadn't been blinded by lust back then, I wouldn't have ended up where I am today." I looked mockingly into his eyes. "Hishuan, you might truly regret it now, but you only regret not being able to hide it from me. If you had managed to keep it a secret, what would you have done?" Hishuan looked bewildered. I continued, "You would have secretly enjoyed the thrill of your affair with Lu Qingqing behind my back, quietly transferring assets and leaving me with nothing but a mountain of debt." Guilt and panic flickered in Shuan's eyes. "What do you mean by that?" I said coldly. "You know exactly what I mean. Stop pretending. I know you were reborn. I read everything you wrote in your diary." Hishuan's body trembled, and after a long while, his knees gave way, and he knelt straight down before me. "I'm sorry. I know it's too late for words, but I just hope you can forgive me for what I did in my past life." I looked down at him, my tone icy. "Hishuan, you are truly a piece of garbage. I used to hate you, wishing I could tear you apart 1,000 times, but not anymore. I won't forgive you, and I won't hate you either, because to me, you're no different from the worms in a cesspit." Hishuan suddenly raised his head, his lips trembling slightly as if he wanted to say something, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. After that, I never saw Hishuan again, and I rarely heard any news about him. He was like a grain of sand, swept away by the torrent of life, and the stories about him were gently turned over and left behind. When my son with Taoheng was 2 years old, we took him back to his maternal grandparents' house. An old friend invited me for a small gathering, and during our chat, I heard the news that Xian had passed away from a myocardial infarction. To be honest, I was quite shocked. Upon further inquiry, I learned that he had stopped taking his anticoagulant medication without permission, leading to stent thrombosis and ultimately causing the myocardial infarction. It turned out that Hishuan had been making a living by running a wonton stall on Chunming Street, barely scraping by. Later, when the city management tightened regulations and prohibited unauthorized street vending, the wonton stall was forced to close to make money. Hishuan went to work on a construction site, carrying bricks. However, due to his limp, the work available to him was limited. Xian, feeling sorry for her father, thought she could save a little money wherever possible, so, just after turning 12, she secretly stopped taking her anticoagulant medication. After Xin passed away, Shuwen fell into a state of semi-madness, often shouting that his daughter was a top student from a 985 university and that he himself was a billionaire CEO. At Xin's funeral, Lu Qingqing returned with a boy about 5 or 6 years old. The boy was chubby and strong, clearly well taken care of, a stark contrast to Xin's frail appearance before her death. The boy complained that the funeral was boring and insisted that his mother take him to the amusement park. For KFC, Lu Qingqing held him and comforted him, saying, "Once we bury your sister, Mommy will take you to the amusement park and treat you to KFC." Upon hearing this, Shuwen's eyes reddened. He let out a furious roar, grabbed Lu Qingqing by the hair, dragged her to Xin's coffin, and slammed her head against it with brutal force again and again. The thudding sounds were eerie and muffled, as if tolling a funeral bell for Xin. Half an hour later, Lu Qingqing was taken away by an ambulance, while Shuwen was escorted away by the police. A friend remarked that Shuwen's life over the past few years could easily be turned into a book. It was too dramatic and full of twists. I forced a smile but couldn't bring myself to laugh. Fate often takes unexpected turns, and different choices can alter the course of one's life. They chose the paths they wanted to walk, fulfilling their own karma, while I embarked on my own journey. From now on, as life unfolds in its unpredictable ways, I hope we never cross paths again. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see the illegitimate daughter my father brought home bound me to a mind-reading system in my previous life. Because of this system, she manipulated me at will, made me a laughingstock, and turned everyone against me. In the end, she even schemed to kill me, completely taking over my position. After being reborn, Grandma doesn't like girls who do housework, saying it's cheap. Little did she know, my grandma despises laziness the most. Dad loves to sing, and he sings incredibly well. Little did he know, my dad is tone deaf. My brother loves mango cake the most. Little did he know, my brother is allergic to mangoes. The top student doesn't like the goody two-shoes. He prefers the rebellious girls. Little did he know, the top student hates those who lack ambition the most. This time, if I don't play her to death, it's all my fault. 3 years after my mother's death, my father finally brought his illegitimate daughter, Rachel, home. On the surface, she appears timid, weak, and at a loss, but in secret, the look in her eyes is confident, sinister, and cunning. I know, she has bound a mind-reading spell on me. In the previous life, she read my mind to understand everything about my family, learned everyone's preferences, quickly won over everyone, drove a wedge between me and my family, and manipulated me at will. In the end, when she was done playing, she pushed me off the rooftop and claimed I had committed suicide by jumping due to depression. Once again, I won't let her off easily. It would be a disrespect to heaven. Grandma, dad, sister, brother, Rachel greeted all of us timidly. When Rachel first came to our home, no one treated her kindly. Her mother used underhanded tactics. While my mother was pregnant with me, she took the opportunity to get my dad drunk, drugged him, and ended up having a relationship with him. My dad originally paid her off with money, but who would have known that a year later, her mother secretly gave birth to Rachel. At first, my dad didn't want to take responsibility for her, but in the end, he couldn't resist the fact that she was his own biological daughter. He still gave money to the mother and daughter every month, but he hardly ever spent time with them. Even after my mom passed away due to illness, my dad still didn't agree to bring them home. Later, when her mother saw no hope of becoming his official partner, she abandoned Rachel and married an old man out of necessity. My dad brought 16-year-old Rachel back home. She looked at us eagerly, hoping for a response. She was also waiting for my inner thoughts. For example, in my previous life, my inner voice was like this: none of our family welcomes her. My grandmother despises illegitimate daughters the most. Dad only let her come back because she has no one to rely on and he pities her. She'd better behave herself after coming back, or my grandmother will definitely kick her out of the house. Then, Rachel immediately started to ingratiate herself. I know my mother is not a good person, and I don't like her either. Over the years, I've been trying to persuade her not to disturb your lives. I won't bother you for long. I know my place. Once I've saved enough money from working, I'll leave on my own. Thank you for taking me in. Temporarily, I'll behave myself and won't cause you too much trouble. Her words immediately won the favor of the whole family and laid a solid foundation for her status in our home. But now, a cold smile curled at the corner of my lips. It was time for you to taste the bitter fruit of your own actions. As Rachel wished, I began my inner monologue. Grandma and Dad have always felt guilty about Rachel. Now that she's back, they'll surely try to make it up to her, Grandma repeatedly told my brother and me that we must get along peacefully with Rachel. Dad said we should always give in to Rachel, as she has suffered so much outside, and now she is the treasure of our family. I noticed a subtle change in the expression on Rachel's face. Just a moment ago, she looked lost and timid, but in an instant, she became confident. She pretended to be wronged and said, "I've suffered a lot with my mom. Others called me an illegitimate child, saying I have a mother but no father to raise me. Since I was little, I never had enough to eat or wear. And I was often abused by my mom. I've always wanted to come back to this home and reunite with all of you. Now it's great. From now on, our family will never have to be apart again." I saw my grandmother's face darken instantly. After all, my grandmother never acknowledged this illegitimate daughter. She reluctantly agreed to let Rachel come back only because my father insisted. And it was conditional on Rachel's future behavior. Now, she's acting as if she's already part of the family. My father didn't look too pleased either. Rachel's remarks about having a mother but no father to raise her and not having enough to eat or wear were clearly accusations of my father's irresponsibility toward her. My dad was already annoyed with her and her mother because of her mom's scheming, and she has the nerve to blame him. "Where is my room? I'm tired and want to go back to rest." Rachel was becoming more and more at ease, as if she couldn't see the expressions on my grandma and my dad's faces. Right, in her mind, all she needs to do is control me to control the entire family. She doesn't even bother spending any effort to figure out what others are thinking. "Nora, take Rachel to her room," my dad called out to me. The attitude toward Rachel now is simply, out of sight, out of mind. "Okay." I obediently nodded and took Rachel to her room. "Sis, can I take a look around your room?" Rachel said to me ingratiatingly after putting down her luggage. In my previous life, I thought she was just genuinely curious. It wasn't until I died that I realized, from the moment she stepped into this house, her goal was to replace me as the eldest daughter of the Stewart family. All right, I played along and took Rachel to my room. Naturally, my room was larger and more luxurious than hers. "Sis, your room is so big and beautiful." Rachel was practically green with envy. In the previous life, it was the same. She couldn't wait to snatch my room away. In the end, I died, and she indeed got her wish and moved in. "Your room is quite nice too. Grandma specifically had the servants tidy it up for you," I said innocently. "How can it compare to yours?" Rachel said with a sour tone. In my previous life, when facing Rachel's jealousy, I thought to myself, does Rachel actually want to live in my room? If she dares to ask, my grandma will definitely kick her out of the house. But at this moment, my inner thoughts are, could it be that Rachel has taken a liking to my room? If she asks Grandma for it, Grandma will surely agree. After all, Rachel has suffered so much, and Grandma must want to make it up to her. I noticed a different expression on Rachel's face. Without lingering, she made an excuse and left. Watching her cheerful figure recede, my smile grew brighter and more cruel. Early the next morning, Rachel is busy in the open kitchen at home. In her previous life, she won over our entire family this way. This time, I deliberately walked up to her and said, "Rachel, you're amazing. You actually know how to cook." But what I was really thinking was, what should I do? Should I tell Rachel that Grandma hates it the most when girls do housework, saying it's degrading and that girls should be pampered and live a life of ease? The next moment, I saw Rachel quickly dump all the breakfast she had made. She said nervously, "Who said I can cook? Since I was little, I've never lifted a finger to do any housework." She spoke very loudly. It seemed to be deliberately said for Grandma, who had just come downstairs. I smiled secretly at the corner of my mouth. Our family has always had strong values, whether it's a boy or a girl. Even if there are servants at home, everyone must share the household chores. My brother and I are not the kind of young masters or ladies who expect everything to be handed to us. I saw my grandma's face immediately fall, her dissatisfaction with Rachel clearly written all over it. Rachel, however, was completely unaware and remained carefree. Later, when the servant reluctantly remade breakfast and the family sat at the table to eat, Rachel continued to act arrogantly, even ordering the servant to hand the breakfast directly to her. I saw my grandma and my dad almost unable to resist the urge to slap her across the face. "Grandma, I didn't sleep well at all last night." Rachel suddenly spoke up. My grandmother didn't want to bother with her at all, but considering the room was prepared for Rachel, she still asked responsibly, "What's wrong? The bed is too hard, the blanket isn't warm enough, and the room's decor isn't to my liking. It's too dull and rigid." My grandmother's face turned completely green, and she even gritted her teeth as she asked, "Then what kind do you like?" "I like the kind of room my sister has. Her room is big and beautiful, the kind I dream of having." Rachel looked at my grandmother with an expectant expression. She was waiting for my grandmother to agree immediately and give her my room. I could see my grandmother Was so angry that even her hair seemed to be smoking. She finally couldn't hold back and yelled at Rachel, "Don't you even look at what status you have? How dare you have the nerve to ask for Nora's room? Rachel, our family letting you step through this door is already doing you a favor. You'd better know your place." Rachel was stunned by my grandma's scolding, her face flushing with waves of heat. She clearly felt awkward and embarrassed. I knew she was about to suspect me, so I immediately gave my inner thoughts. Why would Grandma say that to Rachel? Is it because the room was prepared by Grandma herself, and Rachel said she didn't like it, hurting Grandma's feelings? However, given Grandma's guilt towards Rachel, she probably won't hold it against her for long. Maybe Grandma will even regret scolding Rachel like that and end up apologizing to her. Rachel gradually calmed down, her expression softening. She said, "Grandma, it's my fault. I didn't know this room was something you carefully prepared for me. No matter how much I dislike it, I won't let your thoughtful effort go to waste." These words didn't convey a hint of apology or gratitude. Instead, they made her feel wronged and magnanimous. My grandma was so angry that she threw down her chopsticks and left, but Rachel didn't take it to heart. She was convinced that Grandma would come to apologize out of guilt and then effortlessly take my room. After breakfast, we went to school. Rachel is only half a year younger than me, and my dad enrolled her in the same private elite school and the same class as me. Just like in the previous life, on the first day of school, Rachel fell in love at first sight with Eric, the top performing and most handsome boy in the class. It's not just her who likes Eric. Over half the girls in the school like him, and the other half feel they aren't good enough and don't dare to like him. But Eric has a very cold personality. Apart from studying, he shows no interest in anything else and particularly dislikes anything that interferes with his studies. And puppy love is one of them. In my previous life, I also silently liked Eric and planned to confess to him after the college entrance exams. I also worked hard to keep up with him in my studies, but ever since Rachel arrived, because she read my mind, she read the love letter I had written in advance word for word in front of the whole class. The emotions of girlhood are always sincere and cringy. The content of the love letter made me utterly embarrassed. Rachel, however, said with a well-meaning face that she was only trying to help me. She said she didn't expect Eric to refuse either. In fact, the rejection was quite humiliating. He replied to me in front of the whole class, "Nora, I always thought you were a diligent, studious, well-behaved, and motivated girl. I never imagined that your mind is also filled with such vulgar things as romance. It's truly disappointing. I could never like a girl like you." Because of this, my parents were called to the school. I was accused of puppy love, corrupting my classmates, and negatively influencing the class atmosphere. Walking around school, I would be pointed at by classmates. I once fell into depression and was so ashamed that I didn't dare go to school. During that time, both my grandmother and my father were very disappointed in me, and eventually, they had no choice but to send me to a very ordinary public school. Rachel, on the other hand, received the best education at the most prestigious private school. However, what surprised me the most was that Eric, who had said he wouldn't date early, still ended up in a relationship with Rachel in high school. Recalling all the past events, I tried hard to swallow the anger that surged within me. Next, I'm going to make Rachel's life miserable. Rachel was immersed in her love at first sight for Eric. Suddenly, I heard the voice of my heart. I really like Eric. I saw Rachel finally snap out of it, her eyes glancing at me intentionally or unintentionally, with a sly glint in them. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly. For Rachel, liking someone doesn't necessarily mean she has to have them, but if it's someone I like, she will definitely take them away, so I need to let her know how I feel about Eric. I just won't be foolish enough to let her catch me off guard again. But Eric doesn't like good girls, he prefers the wild ones, I added in my thoughts. Rachel's eyebrows noticeably furrowed, probably finding it quite unbelievable as well. How could such a clean-cut and handsome guy like Eric have such a heavy taste? But my personality is completely different from that of a rebellious girl. Will I never be able to catch up with Eric in this lifetime? I saw a triumphant smile curl at the corner of Rachel's lips. In fact, even before Rachel entered the Stewart family, she had a very poor reputation at her original school. She skipped classes, smoked, bullied the weak, had early relationships, dyed her hair, and wore extremely short skirts. She was a true rebellious girl. My words hit exactly what she was hoping for. I could see from the expression on her face that she was determined to succeed. I felt that Eric was destined to be hers, and it all started from this day. Rachel's appearance is vastly different from when she first arrived at the house. First, she dyed her hair. She dyed it a golden blonde. Then, she modified her school uniform skirt, shortening it to the point where a slight bend would reveal her inner beauty. She doesn't pay attention in class and even argues with the teacher after class. She meets up with a few troublemaking girls to smoke in the restroom, constantly cursing. In the end, she joined those troublemaking girls in bullying timid students and even had her parents called to school. Yet, she shows no remorse. After all, I confide in her from time to time. Does Eric like someone like Rachel? I noticed he looks at Rachel differently and often sneaks glances at her. I'm so anxious. Why can't I be like Rachel? Rachel is really cool. If Rachel confesses to Eric now, he definitely won't reject her, right? Rachel probably felt it was about time, so during a certain evening self-study session, Rachel had put on heavy makeup in advance, wearing a crop top and a miniskirt, chewing gum, and walked up to Eric in front of the whole class. There are no teachers during evening self-study at private schools. The students voluntarily do their homework in the classroom. Her action instantly caught the attention of the entire class. Eric glanced at Rachel. The disgust in his eyes for her couldn't be more obvious. But Rachel, it's completely unnoticeable, she said. Eric, I know you've been noticing me for a long time. Now I'm giving you a chance to be my boyfriend. The entire class turned their gaze, all focused on Rachel. No one could believe that Rachel would actually confess her feelings to Eric, who doesn't know that Eric is solely focused on his studies. While Rachel and Eric's paths are completely opposite, Eric was probably shocked. He looked at Rachel, unable to say a word for a long time. Rachel thought Eric was overjoyed, and the smug curve of her lips became even more pronounced. She said, "Still need to think about it. I don't have that much time for you to hesitate. Are you out of your mind?" Eric finally snapped back to reality, his words leaving no room for politeness. "How could I possibly like you?" Rachel stared at Eric wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe what he had just said. "A girl like you, lazy, unambitious, bullying the weak, and corrupting social morals. Not only would I never like you, but the very idea of you liking me is a disgrace." Eric was known for his sharp tongue. He doesn't care who you are at all. If you provoke him, he can kill you with words. I saw Rachel's entire face turn bright red. At this moment, I can relate to the feeling so deeply. After all, I was once the same way. I was also publicly humiliated by Eric in front of the whole class, feeling utterly ashamed. Don't you like someone like me? Rachel's tone noticeably softened. It was a stark contrast to her earlier arrogant demeanor. Do I need to make it any clearer? Rachel, being around someone like you makes me feel sick to my stomach, even sharing the same air. Rachel was directly brought to tears by Eric's words. How could you say that to me? Why can't I say that to you? Just look at what you're wearing. It's simply appalling. And then look at your usual behavior, not paying attention in class, using foul language after school, smoking, and even bullying classmates. You've done everything a student shouldn't do, Eric said all in one breath without pausing. What? You do it and then don't want anyone to talk about it. Rachel stammered out 3 U's but couldn't form a complete sentence. Don't stand here polluting my air. Eric no longer looked at Rachel and began to lower his head to do his homework. At this, some sarcastic voices could be heard in the class. How could she have the nerve? How dare she defile a godlike guy like Eric? Did she forget to look in the mirror before leaving home? I heard she's the daughter of a mistress. No wonder she's so shameless. Look at Nora and Rachel. They're like heaven and earth apart. Rachel seems to have remembered me at this moment. Her bloodshot eyes glared at me fiercely, as if she wished she could tear me to pieces. I know Rachel is starting to suspect me. Of course, I won't let her catch me red-handed. After all, it's not enough yet. Far from enough. So, the moment I made eye contact with Rachel, I quickly voiced my thoughts. How could this be? This is exactly what Eric said when he rejected me last time. He said he only likes cool girls, not someone like me who's so well behaved. He said he hates nerds. He likes girls with distinct personalities and their own opinions. Clearly, Rachel met all of Eric's requirements. So why was she rejected? Could it be? I pretended to be surprised. I saw Rachel staring straight at me, clearly hooked. Could it be that Eric made up a lie just to reject my confession, to make me back off? Rachel's face turned bright red with anger, her fury and frustration reaching their peak. She probably couldn't accept that she had been misled by my inner thoughts, causing her to lose face and feel utterly humiliated. What's worse, at that moment, the homeroom teacher suddenly appeared in the classroom, and Eric didn't hesitate at all. He immediately complained to the teacher, saying that Rachel had confessed her feelings to him, which was affecting his studies. That was it. The homeroom teacher didn't spare Rachel any face either. Right in front of the whole class, he called my dad and asked him to take Rachel home for reflection and discipline. Once again, my dad was called to the school. He felt humiliated and never treated Rachel kindly again. My grandmother simply couldn't take it anymore and gave her an ultimatum. Rachel, if you ask for your parents to be called in again, don't blame me for being harsh and kicking You out of this house." Rachel was suspended for a week. In the first few days, it was clear to see her despondency and even breakdown. She cried so much every day that her eyes were swollen. However, in the following days, she seemed to bounce back as if nothing had happened. After all, she can read minds. She thinks she has me completely under her control. The Eric incident is just a minor setback, nothing too serious. But Rachel has also become smarter. She knows how disappointed her family has been with her lately, especially in order to chase after Eric. She turned herself into a rebellious girl, so she decided to make up for the impression she had left on her family. She dyed her hair black, stopped wearing makeup, and changed into a normal student uniform. On the day she resumed classes, she also made a self-criticism to my grandma and my dad. Her self-criticism was full of emotion and deep reflection. I could see that my grandmother and my father were visibly moved, and their prejudice against Rachel was beginning to fade. Rachel was also quite pleased with herself. She felt that, if she wanted to, winning over my family and even replacing me would be an easy task. I wasn't in a hurry either. Let her show off for a while. After all, the higher she jumps, the harder she falls. The school's annual singing competition has officially begun. Rachel signed up very enthusiastically. I signed up too. However, in the previous life, Rachel stole the show and was the center of attention. This time, of course, she shouldn't be the only one in the spotlight. On the day of the singing competition finals, the school invited all students, faculty, and the parents of the contestants to watch live. The scene was very lively. My grandmother, my father, and my younger brother all came to the scene to support me and Rachel. My grandmother loves music and sings very well. Although she doesn't sing popular songs nowadays, her folk songs are pleasant to the ear and linger in the air. In my previous life, I had wanted to invite my grandmother to join me on stage for a live duet. Little did I expect that Rachel, having overheard my thoughts, would preemptively ask my grandmother to be her backup singer. Left with no choice, I had to ask my younger brother to join me on stage to sing Two Tigers. After all, my father didn't inherit my grandmother's vocal tone at all and is tone deaf. Although my brother's childish voice is quite adorable, he lacks professional skills and failed to win the judges' favor. However, thanks to my grandmother's moving singing and the advantage of her age, Rachel received the highest score in this round. Finally, I won first place in the singing competition. I smiled faintly at the corner of my mouth. I listened as the host loudly announced the X segment of the singing competition. X stands for improvisation, and this time, the impromptu naming is Friends and Family Sing-Along. There was no prior communication, and none of the contestants knew about this segment. I saw that Rachel was also a bit flustered, because she didn't know who to ask to sing with her. She hasn't been at home for long, so she doesn't know who in the family can sing. I noticed her glance at me, whether intentionally or not. Her little schemes are aimed at me again. I subtly glanced toward my father's spot in the audience. I must have Dad come and sing with me later. Grandma sings so well, and Dad is sure to surpass her. Dad usually doesn't like to show off, but this time, he's definitely going to amaze everyone. Dad will surely be very happy. A triumphant smile immediately appeared on Rachel's face. The host began calling out numbers to start the X segment of the singing performance. I was originally the one right before Rachel. Just as the host called my name, just like in the previous life, Rachel snatched the microphone first. My sister said she needs a bit more rest, so let me go first. Nora, are you sure you want to let Rachel go first? The host was also aware of the relationship between Rachel and me. After all, among close friends and family, there's a high degree of overlap, especially between sisters. Rachel had the advantage by choosing first. In my previous life, I didn't know her true purpose for coming to this family. She disguised herself well, and I thought she was just trying to integrate into our family. After all, the issues of the previous generation shouldn't have been passed down to the next. Additionally, the confession to Eric didn't happen until the next semester, so I never noticed Rachel's pettiness. I kindly let Rachel make her choice first. Later, when she chose Grandma, I wasn't angry. When she won first place, I wasn't angry either. I even offered my blessings, but I never expected that my kindness was just a means for her to manipulate me. But it's okay, good and evil will be repaid. It's not that they won't be, but the time hasn't come yet. Okay, I replied to the host, let Rachel choose first. Rachel eagerly took the microphone and said to my dad, Dad, I want you to sing with me. Down in the audience, my dad's face changed color. He can't sing at all, even less likely to sing in front of so many people. My dad waved his hand, indicating he was unwilling. Rachel, however, thought my dad wanted to help me sing, so she immediately made herself tear up. She said emotionally, Dad, I'm really grateful to be back in this home, with your love, grandmas, my sisters, and my brothers. Over these 16 years, only by returning to your side have I truly understood what family love and happiness mean. Dad, I don't want to win any big awards in this performance. To me, you are more important than any prize. I just want to sing a duet with you, creating a memory I'll cherish forever. Dad, I love you." Rachel's heartfelt confession earned her a round of warm applause from the entire audience. That's why my dad simply couldn't refuse any longer. After all, Rachel had already said that much. She didn't want any awards, she just wanted to sing with him and create beautiful memories. But my dad is the company's leader, he has his pride. If he goes on stage to sing and is tone deaf, it will only make him lose face. But at this point, he has no choice but to go up there and face the music. The host handed the microphone to my dad. Rachel sweetly asked my dad, "Dad, what song do you want to sing?" My dad's face looked extremely upset. He didn't want to sing at all. "Dad, Rachel, what song are you going to sing?" the host also asked. My dad gritted his teeth and chose a song called "The Sound of Waves Remains." Rachel was still flattering him from the side. "Dad, you really have such good taste. I really like this song too." My dad couldn't even force a smile. The staff played the accompaniment. I saw my dad's hand holding the microphone trembling. He listened to the accompaniment and then sang. He clearly rushed the beat on the very first line. Rachel was taken aback for a moment. She probably thought it was due to nervousness that she made a mistake. As a result, she sang several lines, all of which were off-key. At first, the audience was quite expectant. After all, both daughters in the family sing very well, so it was assumed that the father must be good too, but it turned out to be simply unbearable to listen to. Rachel was shocked beside them. She looked at my dad in disbelief. Besides the hints from my inner voice, she probably also thought that my dad could sing. However, the reality was quite a slap in the face. On stage, my dad grew less and less confident as he sang, his voice getting softer and softer. After finishing the song, his face turned completely red. "You have to understand, my father has been highly respected all these years because of his successful career. When has he ever been this embarrassed?" The host didn't know how to smooth things over and just said a few words before letting my father step down from the stage. I could see that my father was utterly mortified the moment he stepped off the stage. Rachel was also stunned on stage, unable to react at all. She must be panicking inside. Having made my father lose so much face, he must dislike her even more now. At this, the host called my name. I gladly invited my grandmother to come on stage to help with the singing. The moment my grandmother's voice came out, it completely stunned the entire audience. At that moment, all the contestants standing backstage began to whisper among themselves. I thought it was a genetic mutation, but it turns out Nora's family has a case of skip-generation inheritance. Grandma's voice is on a completely different level from Dad's. Dad must be even more embarrassed now. Rachel is really something. She knew her dad couldn't sing but still let him go on stage and make a fool of himself. If it were my dad, he would definitely break my legs. Rachel's expression turned even more unpleasant upon hearing the discussion. She glared at me with a fierce look. I immediately responded to her, "So Dad doesn't sing because he's really not good at it? I thought he was just too shy to open his mouth. Grandma sings so well. How come Dad can't sing at all? That's really strange." Thank goodness, Rachel invited Dad first, otherwise I would have been utterly embarrassed. I saw Rachel's face twist in discomfort. Besides preventing her from suspecting that I was messing with her, I was also deliberately using my words to provoke her, piss her off. The singing competition ended, and thanks to my grandma's help as a guest singer, I successfully won first place. Rachel looked at me with a gaze that seemed to wish she could cut me into 1,000 pieces. She had been hoping to win first place this time to finally hold her head high at home, but she never expected that I would snatch such a big opportunity from her. In the car on the way home, I kept complimenting my grandma, saying she was still as sharp as ever and that all my schoolmates had become her fans. The more I said this, the happier my grandma became, and the more displeased my dad looked. Naturally, Rachel looked even more displeased. After getting out of the car, Rachel wanted to please my dad, but he didn't even give her a glance and strode away. Rachel gritted her teeth. I pretended to comfort her kindly. "No one in our family has ever been able to get my dad to perform on stage, but you did it. It proves you're different." in his eyes. Rachel's face twisted with anger. She certainly knew that my dad didn't want to go on stage to avoid embarrassment, yet she made him lose face in front of so many people. I gave Rachel a big smile and went back to my room. The moment I closed the door, I heard Rachel's hysterical scream. The corners of my mouth lifted. "Can't handle this already. The best is yet to come." For a long time after that, Rachel was putting on all sorts of performances at home, especially toward my dad, being extremely attentive and trying to please him, but obviously, my dad paid her no attention. I reckon that making him go On stage to sing in front of thousands of people would become a psychological shadow my father could never escape for the rest of his life. Now, whenever someone brings up singing, my father's face darkens. This knot, I'm afraid, will never be untied. It was my younger brother's 6th birthday, and the house was bustling with excitement. My brother invited a few of his kindergarten friends to celebrate his birthday with him. My grandma and my dad also invited several relatives to come and celebrate my brother's birthday. I noticed that Rachel has been trying to show off in various ways. At one moment, she was playing with the younger siblings, and the next, she was actively chatting with the relatives, appearing well-behaved and sensible. How is Rachel's academic performance? My aunt suddenly asked her. Rachel looked a bit embarrassed. Her grades have always been poor. She's always been at the bottom of her class. With her eyes lowered, she said pitifully, I used to have very good grades at my previous school, but I never expected that after coming to this school. Everyone here is so impressive. No matter how hard I study, I just can't catch up with them. In fact, she never put her heart into studying at all. My aunt, looking at Rachel, was also somewhat moved. The educational conditions are different, so the gap in grades is bound to be significant. But don't worry, Auntie, I will definitely work very hard, Rachel said firmly. I absolutely won't disgrace our Stewart family. Auntie nodded. She looked very pleased. I saw a hint of pride return to Rachel's face. Her eyes twinkled mischievously, as if she was up to no good again. At this moment, the house servant stepped forward and said respectfully, the Yen Master's cake has arrived. The cake is here. I want to eat the cake, my younger brother said excitedly. My brother's little friend couldn't hold back either. Let's eat the cake. Let's eat the cake. I'll take care of it, Rachel quickly volunteered. Then she led a group of children to the side. My aunt watched Rachel's figure and said to my grandma, Rachel doesn't seem as clueless as you and my brother said. She actually seems quite perceptive. My grandmother said impatiently, she always causes trouble from time to time. I don't have high hopes for her. I just hope she doesn't stir up any trouble. I actually think she's quite well behaved. At that moment, Rachel called out from one side of the hall, Grandma, Auntie, come over and blow out the candles for my little brother together. My grandmother, my aunt, and the other relatives all went over. I went over there too. Everyone sang the birthday song for my brother. Rachel also actively distributed cake to everyone. My brother was the star of the day, so of course he got to eat first. Then there were the other little friends, and Rachel gave cake to every elder. Her performance today can be said to have stolen the show in front of the relatives. When she heard a relative praise her, she even gave me a smug glance, with an expression that reeked of a petty person's triumph. In my previous life, on my brother's birthday, she also received countless praises from the relatives in this way, and the final straw that completely ousted me from this family and crushed me was my brother's birthday cake. Rachel, through reading my mind, knew that my brother is allergic to mangoes, so in the cake I prepared for him, she secretly replaced the strawberry cake with a mango cake. It wasn't until after my brother finished eating that the elders realized it was a mango cake. By then, my brother had already broken out in countless small bumps and was rushed to the hospital, where he received 4 fluids for several days. My grandmother, my father, and the relatives at home almost scolded me to death. No matter how I explained, no one believed me. Now, it's finally Rachel's turn, although it's a bit unethical toward my brother. However, in my previous life, my brother was indeed bribed by Rachel and helped her target me, so it's only fair that he suffers a bit in this life. Everyone at home was eating the cake. As they were eating, my grandmother's expression clearly changed. She turned to Rachel. Did you buy the cake? Yes, Grandma. I personally ordered it from the best cake shop and specifically asked for fresh whipped cream and fruit, Rachel quickly said, hoping for praise, just waiting to be praised. Is this a mango cake? My grandmother's voice trembled a little. Yes, mango cake. I even went to the import supermarket to get the best mangoes. Does Grandma like it? Rachel asked sweetly. My grandma's face turned red with anger, and she was so worked up she could barely speak. Rachel looked at my grandma, completely baffled. At that moment, I saw my grandma quickly walk over to my brother and noticed that he had already finished a huge slice of the cake. How can you eat a mango? My grandma asked my brother. My brother was frightened by my grandma's expression. He burst into tears with a wah sound. My dad, who was drinking tea with the elders in the tea room, hurried out upon hearing the noise. What's going on? What's going on? Your precious daughter, the one you brought home, Rachel, gave Tom a mango cake. My grandma fumed, her anger boiling over. What? My dad's face changed color too. He yelled at Rachel, are you crazy? Don't you know he's allergic to mangoes? Rachel was completely stunned by the fury from my dad and grandma. My brother also cried out at that moment. It itches. It really itches. As he said this, he lifted his shirt, revealing a dense cluster of small bumps all over his stomach. My dad took one look and, without a word, picked up my brother. "Let's get to the hospital right away." My grandma quickly followed along, not forgetting to turn back and yell at Rachel, "If anything happens to Tom, I will never let you off." Hospital. My brother was rushed into the emergency room. My grandmother kept crying in the hallway. My dad was also so anxious that he kept pacing back and forth. All the relatives at home were extremely anxious as well. Rachel was clearly frightened too. Her face was pale, and her whole body was trembling. I was also afraid that I had really caused a big disaster. After a while, my brother was wheeled out. "Doctor, how is he? How is my son?" my father asked anxiously. The doctor said, "Fortunately, you brought him in time. He's fine for now, but he'll need to be on N4 for a few days. Go and complete the hospitalization procedures." "Thank you, doctor," my father said gratefully. My grandmother also kept expressing her gratitude. "As parents, you must be aware that allergies are no small matter. In severe cases, they can be fatal." Upon hearing that it could be deadly, my grandmother was utterly terrified. After the doctor left, my brother was also taken to the ward. I had just settled my brother in. My grandmother suddenly slapped Rachel hard across the face. "You jinx. Are you trying to kill my grandson? I never should have agreed to let you into our Stewart family. You, the child of a mistress, are a disgrace to our family." My grandma cursed very harshly, but no one in the entire ward said a word to Rachel. Just like me in my previous life, I was scolded mercilessly by my grandma and dad, who said I was cruel-hearted, while Rachel was fanning the flames on the side. "No, Grandma, let me explain. I didn't know Tom was allergic to mangoes. I had no idea. And it was my sister who said that Tom loves mango cake the most." Rachel directly pointed the finger at me. Everyone looked at me. I looked at Rachel innocently, blinking my eyes. I didn't even need to explain. My grandma immediately scolded her. "How dare you falsely accuse Nora?" It was Nora who first discovered Tom's mango allergy and rushed him to the hospital, preventing anything serious from happening. How could she possibly let Tom eat mangoes? But Rachel was at a loss for words, because no one would believe her. "I don't want to see you. Get out. Get out of the Stewart family's house." My grandmother didn't want to hear Rachel's excuses and didn't even want to look at her again. "Take her away, send her anywhere, just don't let her appear in front of me and be an eyesore." "Grandma, get out." My grandmother screamed hysterically. My father, also furious, grabbed Rachel and left the hospital room. Watching Rachel's disheveled appearance, I finally felt the thrill of revenge. I had finally repaid everything I suffered in my past life in full. I thought Rachel would be kicked out of the Stewart family and have nothing to do with us ever again, but when we returned to the villa, we still saw Rachel's figure. My grandmother almost had a heart attack from anger. My father explained. "Rachel said she knows she was wrong. Do you think you can be forgiven just because you know you were wrong?" my grandmother asked angrily. "No matter what, Rachel is my daughter, and I want to give her one last chance," my father said somewhat helplessly. I don't know what Rachel did to my father that made him still want to give her a break. Come to think of it, Rachel would do anything to get what she wants. Maybe it's just a case of crying, making a scene, and threatening to harm herself. You've given her many chances already. Rachel said that if she can rank in the top 10 of her grade in this final exam, she'll be allowed to stay. My dad suddenly said, "Top 10, my grandma said with extreme sarcasm. She's ranked over 1,000 in the whole school, and she wants to make it to the top 10. Is she dreaming?" So I agreed to her, so she won't have any excuse to keep staying at our house, my dad said. My grandma thought it made sense and reluctantly agreed. If she doesn't get in, she has to leave immediately. I don't want to see her anymore. "Did you hear that, Rachel?" my dad called out to Rachel. "I heard. If I don't get in, I'll leave on my own without grandma or dad reminding me. I wouldn't have the face to stay at home anyway." Rachel promised. "You better keep your word." My grandma left after saying that. My dad didn't want to deal with Rachel either, and left as well. Only I was still standing in the hall. Rachel's gaze at me no longer held back as she questioned, "Nora, did you do it on purpose?" "On purpose for what?" I asked with an innocent look. I acted as if I had no idea what she was talking about. "Tom can't eat mango cake. Why did you say it's his favorite?" "I never said that." I was baffled. Rachel glared at me fiercely. I knew she was suspicious of me, but she didn't dare to say it outright. She still wanted to use me. However, Tom really loves eating mango cake. There were 2 times when he ended up in the hospital after sneaking mango cake, I said honestly, but liking it is one thing, he just can't eat it. Rachel was so angry she could practically spit blood. She was probably a little angry with herself, too, thinking she had misunderstood what I meant. After all, at that time, my inner thoughts really just said, Tom loves mango cake the most, but I didn't say I was going to buy her a mango cake. Rachel gritted her teeth so hard they almost shattered, and she stormed off in a rage. The final exams are in 2 months. I don't know how Rachel managed to get into the top 10 in the entire school in just 2 months. You have to understand, I've been working hard since I was a child, and I've been constantly attending training classes, just barely making it into the top 10 in the entire school. Later, I roughly figured it out during the exam. She read my mind. She didn't value studying before, and to chase after Eric. She deliberately didn't perform well on exams, so she just did them carelessly and always got poor grades. In these recent monthly exams and pop quizzes, she has been scoring quite well. Her progress has been rapid and remarkable. Once, when I took Rachel's test paper, I realized that the mistakes she made were almost exactly the same as mine. Of course, she is also quite clever, and she didn't completely copy my answers to avoid being noticed for any abnormality. She made progress little by little. For example, this time she improved by 100 places in the exam, and next time she improved by 200 places. Gradually, the teacher began to praise her in class. Her classmates were also very surprised, never expecting Rachel to improve so quickly. The key point is that I don't usually see her putting in much effort. She just doesn't play around as much as before. Rachel is starting to get cocky again. From time to time, she'll even deliberately make sarcastic remarks. Studying also requires intelligence. Just cramming mindlessly will only turn you into a bookworm. Anyway, as long as I want to learn, I can get good grades. These comments are clearly aimed at mocking me. In the whole class, I study the hardest. It used to be for Eric, but now it's for myself. Having been reborn, I understand more clearly what matters most. In the last 2 months of the semester, Rachel thrived in class. Because the teacher kept praising her, the classmates began to see her in a different light, and Eric also started to gradually notice Rachel. Although there was no clear affection, he no longer rejected Rachel. Occasionally, when Rachel took the initiative to ask Eric questions, he would patiently explain them to her. Every time this happened, she would look at me with a challenging gaze. She thought I still liked Eric. That's hilarious. Only a fool would go back to their ex. The final exams arrived as scheduled. Rachel is full of confidence. She even says everywhere that she must make it into the top 10 of the whole school this semester. Before, she might have been laughed at, but this time, everyone believes she can succeed. I'm really looking forward to witnessing a miracle. On the day of the exam, I calmly and seriously worked on the questions, finishing them quickly. After the exam, Rachel went around saying the test was very easy. If the teacher hadn't forbidden it, she would have handed in her exam paper early. A week later, all the students returned to school to collect their final exam results. Every year, the school honors the top 10 students in front of all the teachers and students. All the students sat in the audience, waiting for the final awards ceremony of the semester summary meeting. Rachel, you must be in the top 10, right? A classmate whispered to her. I don't know, but the questions all seemed pretty easy. Rachel said nonchalantly, I really envy you. You just have to focus on your studies. But no matter how hard I try, my grades don't improve, the classmate said. Enviously, another classmate quickly chimed in. My mom also asked me to find out what you usually eat. She wants to help me boost my brain power. Rachel was flattered to the extreme. The principal began announcing the list of the top 10 students in the school. All the students were a bit nervous. Rachel isn't as composed as she appears to be. After all, whether she can make it into the top 10 still depends on me. The names were announced one by one. Neither my name nor Rachel's was called until the top 3. Rachel, you didn't actually get top 3 in the whole school. Did you? A classmate exclaimed in surprise. Rachel didn't say anything. I could tell she was a bit flustered, but she probably thought that since her name wasn't on the list, maybe she really was in the top 3. If she makes it to the top 3, she will truly make a name for herself. The principal announces the 3rd place. Neither I nor Rachel made it. The principal announces the 2nd place. Eric. Eric was always the 1st place before. This time he dropped to 2nd place. Clearly not too happy. Some classmates started to tease. No way, Rachel even surpassed Eric. Just 2 months, and she caught up. She is really impressive. Eric also turned to look at Rachel, although there was a sense of unwillingness in his eyes, but clearly, he had gained a bit more admiration for Rachel. Rachel gritted her teeth, not daring to respond in the slightest. The principal held the list of top students, glanced at it, and said with relief, this time, the top student in the entire school is a girl. The whole class fixed their eyes on Rachel, but I could see that Rachel was already panicking like crazy. After all, she copied from me. I didn't make it into the top 10, so how could she possibly get 1st place? The next moment, the principal announced loudly, Nora, congratulations, Rachel. A classmate began, about to cheer for her, but the words were left unfinished. The whole class was stunned. What, Nora? Isn't it Rachel? The eyes of the entire class once again focused on me in unison with Disbelief. My usual grades are indeed quite good, but being first, surpassing Eric, is still quite surprising. After all, everyone thought Rachel was exceptionally talented, and no one would notice how hard I had been working during that time. I happily stood up and went on stage to receive the award. I saw Rachel's face contort with disbelief. She couldn't understand why I had come in first. While she hadn't even made it into the top 10, a classmate comforted her by saying, "Maybe you underperformed. Perhaps you're 11th, 12th. That's still really impressive." Rachel endured it. She endured it all along. After the school's faculty and student assembly, the students returned to their classrooms to collect their report cards. The homeroom teacher gave me generous praise from the podium, then said with a cold expression, "The top student in the entire school is in our class. And the student with the lowest score in the entire school is also in our class." The whole class was in an uproar. Our class has the highest average score in the entire grade. In all my years of teaching, this is the first time I've seen such an outrageous exam paper. How on earth did she manage to avoid every correct answer? With a total score of 750, she only scored 60, averaging 10 points per subject. The homeroom teacher grew angrier as she spoke. "Rachel, tell me, how did you do it?" Hearing the name Rachel, the entire class was stunned. Everyone looked at Rachel. "Impossible," Rachel said excitedly. "There's no way I only scored 60, it's impossible. I always score at least 700 or above." I scored 710, and Rachel thought that even if she scored a bit less, she should still have at least 700. "See for yourself." The homeroom teacher directly handed the original test paper and answer sheet to Rachel. Rachel quickly took it over. It was indeed her test paper. How could these questions be wrong? Rachel questioned the homeroom teacher. "You tell me, how could they be wrong? Did the machine make a mistake? Then tell me, how do you solve this problem?" The homeroom teacher randomly pointed to a question and asked Rachel. Rachel was a bit troubled. In fact, it wasn't just Rachel who didn't believe it. Even the homeroom teacher didn't believe it when they received the report card and the test paper, and also thought it was a mistake. It's possible that Rachel made a mistake while filling out the answer sheet. "Come to the front and solve this problem step by step in front of the whole class," the homeroom teacher urged. Rachel had no idea how to do it. It was all because she was listening to my thoughts during the exam. She looked somewhat bewildered at the blackboard, then glanced back at me. I looked at her with a serious expression, giving her no hint of my thoughts. "Don't know how." The homeroom teacher frowned. Rachel was speechless. "What about this question?" the homeroom teacher asked again. Rachel still couldn't figure it out. "Rachel, how did you usually get your grades? Did you cheat? This is such a simple question, practically giving you points, and you still can't do it." The homeroom teacher was furious. "I even argued with the school administration over your grades, saying there must have been a mistake. Now it seems I was just humiliating myself. With grades like yours, you're just waiting to be expelled." The homeroom teacher didn't waste another word on Rachel and told her to return to her seat. Naturally, there were more mocking voices around at that moment. "This is hilarious. So she was cheating all along. I was wondering how she improved so quickly. I thought she was some kind of prodigy. How could she have the nerve to act so smug all the time? If I were her, I'd just jump off a building and die right now. It's so humiliating." Nora came in first, Rachel came in last. I don't know if the Stewart family's ancestors are blessed with good fortune or if someone poured feces on their graves. Rachel was mocked to the extreme. The homeroom teacher didn't waste too much time. After handing out the grades, assigning homework, and going over holiday precautions, she dismissed the class. At the school gate, I was just about to get in the car to go home. Eric suddenly called out to me, "Nora." I turned around and looked at him. "How are you planning to spend this holiday?" Eric asked me proactively. There were also many classmates around, all watching us. Eric is very famous throughout the school. He has too many admirers. This is the first time he has taken the initiative to speak to a girl. "Is there something you need? If you don't mind, we could study together during the vacation." "I do mind." I directly refused. Everyone around me was staring at me with wide eyes. Eric was also looking at me in disbelief. He had always been the one to reject others. He had never been rejected before. "Sorry, I'm used to studying alone." After saying that, I walked away. I had just arrived home. Rachel followed right behind me. Naturally, my family already knew about my school grades. "Anything else to say?" my dad asked Rachel. My grandmother was even more openly mocking towards Rachel. "Didn't you say you were going to rank in the top 10 of the whole school? And what happened? You ended up last in the entire school. The school even called to ask you to drop out. You've completely shamed our Stewart family." Fortunately, Nora is obedient and got first place in the whole school. "Saving face for our family," Rachel sobbed. "Grandma, Dad, please give me another chance. This was an accident. I swear I'll do better next time. My dad didn't bother arguing with Rachel anymore. He simply threw Rachel's luggage right in front of her. Dad, I'm your own daughter. How can you bear to leave me out on the streets? Rachel pretended to be pitiful. My only real daughter is Nora. My father said coldly, get out of here right now, or I'll have someone throw you out. Grandma, get out. My grandmother had absolutely no good impression of Rachel. Rachel kept crying and refused to leave. Both my grandma and my dad lost their patience and went upstairs directly. Before going upstairs, they gave an order, give her 10 minutes. If she still doesn't leave, kick her out. Rachel was completely devastated. She couldn't figure out why things had ended up like this until her gaze fell upon me. Seeing the smile at the corner of my mouth, she seemed to suddenly understand. Nora, was it you? Was it you who has been harming me all along? Rachel glared at me fiercely. What did I do to you? I said innocently. Why did you get first place, and I ended up last? You did it on purpose, didn't you, Nora? It was all your doing, Rachel said. The more she spoke, the clearer it became. You said Grandma doesn't like girls who do housework, but Grandma clearly hates laziness the most. You said Eric likes rebellious girls, but Eric actually likes those with good grades. You said Dad can sing, but it turns out he's tone deaf. You said that Tom likes to eat mango cake, but Tom is allergic to mangoes. During the exam, you said this question should be answered with A, but in the end, you chose C. Rachel finally understood. You know I can read minds, Rachel screamed, suddenly realizing she had been played by me. She seemed to go completely insane. Her eyes were bloodshot, looking utterly ferocious. I'm going to kill you, Nora. I'm going to kill you. Of course, Rachel couldn't kill me. She hadn't even gotten close to me before the house servant threw her out directly. No matter how she raved or made a scene, no one opened the door for her, but she didn't give up. Half a month later, Rachel called me, saying she wanted to apologize to me in person. She said that after apologizing to me, she would go to S City to work. She said she just wanted to see me one last time. Of course, I knew she didn't want to see me. She wanted to kill me, just like in the previous life. She thought that by killing me, she could completely take my place. As long as I was gone, the Stewart family would accept her. I went as invited. It's the same penthouse as in the previous life. It's only been half a month since we last met. Rachel has changed a lot. She no longer wears glamorous clothes and looks disheveled and haggard, she said. My mom, to please my stepfather, actually made me. Rachel couldn't go on, looking utterly devastated. I said coldly, that's your mom's fault too. Coming to me won't help. As long as you let me return to the Stewart family, I won't have to suffer at my mom's place anymore. Rachel, you're 17 years old, you have hands and feet. Do you really have to rely on your mother to survive? You're also 17, why do you still depend on the Stewart family to support you? Why? Rachel questioned me. We're both our father's biological daughters. Why am I being treated differently? Because you're the illegitimate daughter. That's not my fault. So my dad gave you a chance to come back, but you didn't cherish it, I sneered. If you hadn't schemed against me, would Dad and Grandma have come to dislike me? Rachel grew increasingly agitated. If you hadn't tried to replace me and become the only daughter of the Stewart family, why would I have schemed against you? I retorted. Rachel froze. I didn't expect that I would know what she was thinking. You can read minds too. Guess, I sneered. Rachel seemed unwilling to argue with me any further. I don't care what you have. As long as you die today, I don't believe Dad and Grandma won't accept me. The words fell. Rachel used all her strength to push me off the rooftop. As I fell, I saw Rachel smiling triumphantly and cruelly, just like in the previous life. Unfortunately, this time, not so lucky this time. When I fell, I landed on a safety air cushion that had been prepared in advance, and Rachel's criminal actions against me were all recorded by the camera I had installed beforehand. I handed the video over to the police. Rachel was sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted murder with aggravated circumstances. Rachel was taken away from the courtroom. I sent her my thoughts from afar. Congratulations, you'll be rotting in prison for life. Heaven's vengeance is slow but sure. Man's retribution is swift and certain. Goodbye, see you in the next life. I watched as Rachel, handcuffed, struggled frantically, as if she wanted to perish together with me, but was brutally restrained by the prison guards, unable to move. Truly, a satisfying outcome. I stepped out of the courtroom and took a deep breath of fresh air. Although I didn't make Rachel pay with her life in this second chance at life, living like this must be more torturous than death, and my wonderful life has only just begun. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you like this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.